All right, welcome back. The next thing we're talking about is pagination. So this is actually similar to button groups. It's a group of buttons, or usually links, that you use for page navigation. So usually when you have multiple pages of content, whether it's multiple pages of search results or something else, you use this pagination navigation. So the basics of it, you have a nav, which is the standard thing to use because it makes sense to put it. I mean, it's for navigation. You could do it as a div as far as the styling goes. And then it's best practice to give it a label to explain what this nav is for, because often you have more than one nav on a page. So the example they give is use the ARIA label attribute for search results page or pages, or whatever it corresponds to, email, inbox, results, something that's more descriptive than just a plain nav. Then we do a UL with class pagination, an LI with class page item, and then our link, or anchor tag, with class equals to page link. And so we can try this one out quickly. We would come down here, do something like nav, and again, it's best to do ARIA label. And for mine, I'm just going to say demo nav. Okay, and then we do a UL with the class of pagination, and then an LI with the class of page-item. And then for each one, I like to do them on separate lines, an A with the class of page link. And wherever that link goes, of course, I'm going to leave it blank. And then we can put something in here like previous, and then duplicate this a couple of times. And then, I don't know, put 1, 2, 3, and then next. And if we look at it, I need to change my title up here. This is what we get. We get this nice hover effect. These are clickable all over the place, not just on the text, which they do deliberately. We can also do active and disabled states. So let's say we're on page 1. We can do, if we go to the page item, we'll say page item active. And it now shows we're on page 1. And if we're on page 1, we can't go backwards, so we could make this disabled. There we go. Now I can't click. So we can also work with icons in here. However, it's a little trickier when we consider screen readers and just general accessibility best practices, because the way we make one of these icons is with this little, I can't remember what these are even called, HTML entities. I just looked it up. They are the least human readable thing on earth. They make 0 sense to the human eye unless you see them rendered. But we can do it, so I'm going to just duplicate this nav. And you could get away with it by just doing this. Let's see, is this the next or previous one? I think I copied the next code, and then the previous one is this with an L for left, I believe. Okay, so now we have those icons. But if you're using a screen reader, this makes 0 sense. Maybe if you're used to just terribly inaccessible pages for years, you might learn to recognize that, which is very sad. So what we do instead, it does require a bit more markup, but we give the span a class of ARIA hidden, or it's not a class, the attribute ARIA-hidden true. And this basically will prevent screen readers from having to deal with it. So we do span attribute ARIA hidden equals true, and put that in there. So we shouldn't see anything different. It still works. But then we also come in and add another span that says screen reader only is the class. So span.sr only. And this, not previous, this allows us to give additional information for screen readers. So we're not just hiding this and having nothing there, an empty button or an empty link. We're putting previous there in place. Okay? And we could do the same thing. I'll just duplicate this down here and then change the HTML entity to be the right arrow and change this text to be next. And nothing should look different, but we've just made it a lot more accessible. We can also change the sizing. So we can do pagination-LG or -SM for small. So we'll do one more of these, and we'll make this one pagination space pagination LG. And we get a nice and large one. Lastly, let's talk about using flex utilities. We can move our navs around or position them, our pagination navs. So I made this little card here. Let's say that this is showing reviews of a website or of a restaurant. It says great food and then a meaningless lorem ipsum review. Let's say that we have a lot of these reviews and we want some pagination down here so people can click to other pages of reviews. Well, I could just come to this card, which ends right here. So here's our card body. I'm using the grid system. It's column large 6, so it takes up the entire container until we hit large, at which point it's centered because I gave it an offset of 3 as well. Anyway, what we can do now is just copy one of our navs. Let's just take this first one right here, copy it, and then put it inside the card after the card body. And we should change this. It should be reviews nav and save. And first you may like it like this, but we could also move it around. So we give pagination this, or we give the UL with the class pagination a class of justify content. And if we want it on the right side, we could say end, or we could say center. And I like it centered. That's probably a standard way of doing it. So now we get these pages here, and that's pretty much it. So we can use that justify content utility to move it around. Cool.